Is it working? Hmm. Okay, cool. Welcome back to the Lost Years of Merlin. We are on chapter 11 entitled Sailing. If you may remember, in chapter 10, our boy Emerus went back to the beach that he washed up on 5 years ago and decided to make a raft out of the old oak tree that is long dead but saved him a long time ago. So let's see if it can save him again. All right, chapter 11, Sailing. Using the broken limbs of the ancient oak, lashed together with rope-like shreds of bark, I built my raft. Relying only on my second sight, I often misjudged the fit of limbs and the strength of knots. Yet plank by plank, my raft came together. In its center, I placed a large slab from the hollow of the tree, which provided a slightly cupped seat where I could ride. Finally, I bound the edges with several long strands of kelp that I found among the rocks. By the time I finished, the sun was starting to set. I dragged the meager craft to the edge of the waves. On a whim, before pushing off, I ran back to the tidal pool where the conch shell still drifted. Scooping it up, I dropped it on the sand so that the crab might find its home again. Gulls screeched, in laughter it seemed, as I waded into the cold waves. Before climbing on my feeble vessel, I hesitated. Opposing worlds tugged at me. I stood exactly on the edge of land and sea, of past and future. For a moment I lost my resolve. Water lapped about my thighs, the same water that had nearly drowned me before. Perhaps I was acting too hastily. Perhaps I should return to shore and think of a better plan. Just then I noticed a hint of gold shining on the remains of the old tree. The sunset had struck the trunk, etching it in fire. It reminded me of another tree on fire, a tree whose flame still burned me deeply, and I knew I must try to find the answers to my questions. I pulled myself aboard the raft, settling into the cupped center. I folded my legs in front of me. I looked one more time at the black cliffs, then turned away from shore. Dipping my hands in the chilly water, I paddled for some distance until my arms grew too tired. The fading sun, still strong enough to warm my wet skin, made the water sparkle with many more colors than I could detect. Yet even though I could not truly see, I could sense the web of pink and golden light dancing just beneath the waves. As the tide carried me farther from shore, a breeze leaned against my back. Where the sea might take me, I did not know. All I could do was trust. I thought about ancient seafarers like Bran the Blessed, Odysseus and Jonah, whose tales I had heard from Bronwyn, and I wondered whether anyone but Bronwyn would ever care about my own ocean voyage. I wished that someday I might be able to describe it to her, but in my heart I knew that I would never see her again. A black-headed gull swooped past, skimming the surface of the waves in search of supper. With a loud squawk, it careened toward the raft and settled on one of the strands of kelp dangling from the side. Clamping its beak on the green frond, it pulled and twisted madly. Away! I waved my hands in its face. The last thing I needed at this moment was to have my little craft pulled apart by a hungry bird. The gull dropped the kelp, lifted off with a screech, then circled the raft. A few seconds later it landed again, this time on my knee. The bird's eye, which seemed as yellow as the sun, examined me. Apparently concluding that I was too large, or too tough, for a ready meal, the gull cocked its black head and took flight, heading back to shore. As I watched the gull depart, I yawned. The continuous rocking of the waves was making me drowsy, more so because I was spent from my days of trekking from Caer Mirden. Yet how could I sleep? I could fall off the raft, or worse, miss something important. I tried to rest without sleeping. Curling my back, I leaned my head against my knees. To keep myself awake, I concentrated on the slowly setting sun. By now, the great burning globe was resting just above the water, sending a shimmering band of light across the waves, right to my raft. It might have been an avenue of gold, a pathway across the water. I wondered where that path might lead, just as I wondered where my own might lead. Checking over my shoulder, I could tell that I had already drifted some distance from shore. Although the breeze had subsided, I realized the raft might have caught a current. I bounced over the waves, which splashed me constantly. Despite the jostling, my lashings still looked taut, the wood still sturdy. Licking my lips, I tasted the salty spray. As I laid my head again on my knees, I could not help but yawn again. The sun, swollen and scarlet, ignited the clouds with colors that I could only see subtly. The shape of the sun I could sense more clearly as it grew flatter on the horizon. An instant later, as if it were a bubble that had finally burst, it disappeared below the waves. But I did not notice the onset of darkness, for I had fallen asleep. A sudden splash of cold water woke me. Night had arrived. A host of stars clustered around the thinnest crescent moon I had ever known. I listened to the ceaseless heaving and sucking of the waves, to the bashing of water against wood. I slept no more during that night. Shivering, I drew my legs tightly to my chest. I could only wait for whatever the sea wished to show me. As the sun rose behind me, I discovered that the coast of Gwynedd had disappeared. Not even the imposing cliffs were visible anymore. Only a faint wisp of a cloud stretched like a pennant from what I guessed might be the summit of Iwidfa, though I could not be sure. I spied a timber that had slipped out of its lashing and quickly bounded up again. As the day dragged on, my back and legs grew painfully stiff, but I couldn't stand to stretch them without flipping over. Waves slapped relentlessly against the raft and against me. The hot sun burned the back of my neck. Meanwhile, my mouth and throat felt an even stronger burning, which increased as the day wore on. Never before had I felt so thirsty. Just at sunset, I perceived a group of large, streamlined bodies leaping above the ocean surface. Although 7 or 8 individuals comprised the group, they swam in perfect unity. They moved like a single wave, surging and subsiding. Then, as they passed near my raft, they changed direction and swam a complete circle around me. Once, twice, 3 times they ringed me, leaping in and out of the bubbles of their own wakes. Were they dolphins, or sea people, perhaps, the ones Bronwyn called people of the Mer, who were said to be part human and part fish? I could not see well enough to tell, yet the glimpse of them filled me with wonder. As they swam away, their bodies gleaming in the golden light, I promised myself that if I should ever live long enough, I would do whatever I could to explore the mysterious depths under the sea. Another night passed, as cold as before. The crescent moon vanished completely, swallowed by the stars. Suddenly I remembered the constellations and Bronwyn's stories about their origins. After much searching, I managed to find a few, including my favorite, the winged Pegasus. I imagined that the constant rocking of my raft was the galloping of the steed across the sky. I fell asleep, dreaming that I was carried aloft on the back of some great winged creature, although whether or not it was a Pegasus, I could not be sure. Suddenly we were swooping into battle. A darkened castle manned by ghostly sentinels rose up before us, and yes, the castle was spinning, turning on its foundation. It drew us down toward its spinning edifice. I tried with all my might to change course, yet I could not. In seconds we would slam straight into the castle walls. At that point I woke up. I shivered from more than cold. The dream filled my thoughts deep into the following day, though its meaning continued to elude me. Late that afternoon, the western horizon grew dark. Waves rose to new heights, throwing my vessel this way and that as winds hurled sheets of spray. The raft groaned and creaked. Several strands of kelp burst apart, and a crack appeared in the large slab of wood from the hollow of the old oak. Still, for the most part, the storm passed me by. With twilight, calmer waters returned. I was soaked, to be sure, and terribly thirsty, but both my craft and I remained intact. That night I did my best to repair the broken lashing. Then, as I sat cross-legged, a biting wind smacked my face. Another shadow, darker than before, swept across the stars. Swiftly it covered the southern sky, then the dome above me, until finally the entire sky went black. As darkness swallowed me, my second sight flickered out, useless in such utter blackness. I couldn't see. I was no less blind than I had been on the day I first arrived at the church. Mighty waves began lifting and swirling, tossing my raft like a mere twig. Water drenched my face, my back, my arms and legs. And this time the storm did not dissipate. Rather, it swelled, gathering strength with each passing minute. Bending low in my seat, I curled up as tight as I could, like a hedgehog fearing for its life. I wrapped my hands around the outermost edges of the raft, clinging to the scraps of wood that were keeping me afloat. My powers! For an instant I considered calling on them. Perhaps I could bind the raft together, or even calm the waves. But no, I had promised. Besides, those powers frightened me deeply, even more than this terrible gale. The truth was, I knew nothing about magic except its terrible consequences. The smell of scorched flesh, the screams of another person, the agony of my own burning eyes. However, my powers might have helped me. I knew that I would never use them again. All through the black night, the storm howled and raged. Curtains of water fell on me. Enormous waves pounded me. At one point, I recalled the story of Bran the Blessed surviving a fierce storm at sea, and it gave me a brief burst of hope that I, too, might survive. Yet this hope was soon drowned in the ocean's onslaught. Both of my hands went numb with the cold, yet I dared not release their grip to try to warm them. More of my lashing popped. One timber split down the middle. My back ached, though not as much as my heart. For something inside me knew that this storm would spell the end of my voyage. The rising sun brightened the sky only a little, but it was enough that I could begin to sense shapes again. My second sight had only barely returned when a powerful wave crashed down so hard that it knocked the breath right out of me. The raft buckled and finally broke apart. In that terrifying instant, I was cast down into the seething sea, battered by the currents. By luck, I touched a floating timber and grasped it. Another wave toppled over me, and another, and another. My strength ebbing, I started to lose my grip. The wild storm continued thrashing and pounding. As the new day dawned, I felt sure that it would be my last. I barely noticed the odd-shaped cloud hovering low over the water, though it looked almost like an island made of mist. With a plaintive cry, I let go. Water poured into my lungs. Okay, and that was the end of chapter 11. So next is actually part 2 and chapter 12 called Fallen Warrior. All right, I will see you all tomorrow.